just if I can come in on that, a couple of quick points. The first is exactly on that question of Erasmus. We have Erasmus Mundus, which wants to encourage students from all over the world to come and study in Europe, and vice versa. And it's not just students, it's also academics. But this is an area where there could be more circulation of people and circulation of ideas and understanding. And the ASEM, to which Patrick referred in his opening intervention, the Asia+Europe meeting, is very much designed towards having a conversation of the nature, let's get to know each other better. It's not a negotiation, it's not the UN working out, statements on this, that, and the other. It's about a greater understanding each of the other. And there's a civil society side to that, where we have a foundation based in Singapore, which does a lot of good work. I would also like to agree with Patrick that sometimes you can be too hard on yourselves here in Australia. In my experience, but I think if we're going to go down the road of saying just exactly how popular Australia is abroad and why, you need another program. But I mean, Australia is very well known abroad, but particularly if you come from Britain or Ireland. I mean, that's obvious, but also from other European countries because of all of the links. But many of the reasons for this come from an adjacent but different field, the one of sport, where Australia is well known as per capita the winner of the Olympics every 4 years. But there are things that Australia is doing, and to my narrow view, I think it seems to be increasingly doing. In the arts field, for example, here in Melbourne, the National Gallery of Victoria has had some wonderful European exhibitions in recent years, which if you were to visit them in Europe, you'd need to visit 5 or 6 different museums or art galleries, or maybe 5 or 6 different cities. I'm thinking of the Klimt and Viennese exhibition last year, and there was a European Masters from Frankfurt. Yeah. But Australia and Australian cities are getting more vibrant on these. I see the same in Brisbane and in Sydney, as well as in Melbourne. So you may run the risk of being just a bit too harsh on yourselves in that respect.
Just make one little reply. I mean, I think it was DFAT recently did a study and looked at the way in which Australia was perceived overseas, and we came very low indicators on sophistication, knowledge country, and cultural presence. And that's coming from DFAT. When I was in Brussels, whilst I think Australia has a positive image in many of the kind of characteristics you were talking about before, David, I think that is really beneficial in some areas, particularly in sports. In the arts, we really struggle for visibility. So whilst the marketing image, the picture of Australia might be sunny and glowing, on the ground, making engagements with people on a professional level, it is a real struggle. And I think it's partly looking, if you look up, I think it looks okay. But if you're looking down on the ground and working on the ground, there is very little traction. Certainly in performing arts, I think there's very little traction. And we probably have to be, I think, it's not about being harsh, but we have to be a bit more, we have to be very careful about our measurements here. It's not about how many invitations we get for our work to go to various parts of the world. Those invitations come at a phenomenal rate these days, honestly, to go and bring your work to any number of festivals that you can never get to because you have to pay your way to it. We have to actually look at the way in which we are engaged with and invited to certain kinds of engagements which then permeate throughout those cultural sectors in the other countries and in continents. And that, I think, is it's a different argument in a way, rather than a large argument about presentation and brand and image. And it's more to do with how does it happen on the ground?
But do you not think, David, that the more there are the sort of exhibitions organised in Australia that I've mentioned, and there are ones in Canberra, there are Renaissance and so on and so on, the more these things are happening here in Australia, the more that message of a greater sophistication in Australia, perhaps, than people have thought, will percolate back elsewhere abroad, because Australia is able to do things and is doing interesting things.
I think the issue is that it's not a two-way street, though. And in fact, it's very, very difficult to get Australian exhibitions into Europe, or at a major high-status institution such as the NGV, because, and I was talking to the NGV director about this the other day, because it's admitted that they would lose too much on that exhibition. It comes down to finances, that the viability of such a show could not be guaranteed in terms of audience reception.
Well, I was told at the Pompidou that we're not different enough. When they were bringing in a large show of Indian work, Indian contemporary artists, Australia is just a bit too similar. So it's a hard one to crack. Look, I think we've got time very briefly. Have we got time? Very brief time for some questions. If you're going to ask a question, we've got 2 microphones. They'll be brought to you. So please put up your hand. In the front.
Hello, my name is Michelle Katevsky. I'm from Urban Theatre Projects in Sydney. I find the last point, that we're too similar and we can't take the financial risk back in wherever, to pick up on points that David and Patrick made, in that you pointed out that business in Australia has harnessed the power of the cultural diversity amongst the population of only 20 million. And I'd like to ask whether David and Patrick have seen that cultural diversity represented in Australia's cultural product that is exported across Europe or Asia.
Should I start? I mean, you have a national treasure which is so potent, which is so powerful, that it makes a shadow of the rest, and that is Aboriginal art. Ask any Australian about Australian art equals Aboriginal art. And it's so overwhelming that that's what people expect. You Australians, so I mean, you're coming with some Aboriginal art. It's not in today, and these places that I'm going to say that it's Australia is something like immensely more varied and diverse than that. But the problem we all have to deal with is to build an image. And each and every country is trying to build an image that you would sell yourself, for good or for bad, I mean, for business, for politics, and blah, blah. And everybody's trying to do the same thing, honestly, in the international scene, political, cultural, and propaganda, if I may say, kind of situation. We all want to profile ourselves as multicultural, open, efficient, kind, friendly, and good business. And starting with good business, of course. But anyway, we all try to do that, and we all fail, because we all want to do the same thing. I give you a quick example. Every country tries to profile itself as an IT center or research center or biotech, whatever you like. And we spend tens of millions on that one, any country. And after that, I mean, I have in mind a European country, a very, very nice place, and I won't mention which one. And they tried, and they found out at the end of the day, after 2 or 3 years and spending something like 30 million or 40 million in profiling as IT blah blah, that what was the image of the country, that was still the windmills and the flowers. I can spend 20 million tomorrow morning in Belgium for you, it will still be chocolates, hopefully diamonds, you deserve it. And thank you. Oh, good. Chocolates. and we stick with an image. Once the image is there, it's extremely complicated, expensive, and lengthy to change, if ever. So Australia, you better place than I am too, but it's Aboriginal art. is Crocodile Dundee. I'm sorry and I apologize profusely about it, but that's your fault, huh? But it's so, and we know it. It's also a vibrancy, including, I mean, literature, for example, in Australia. It's extraordinary, honestly, and it's underrated. But you have to deal with the image you have, which is simplistic, which is a reduction of what you have to offer. But we all have the same situation. So I mean, I hope that it's at least partly an answer to